All right, the Senate will come back to order. All right, we're going to continue down the rules calendar here. First bill we'll take up here is House Bill 984. Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 984, a bill by Representative Lunston of the 12th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Titles 25 and 33 of the OCGA relating to fire protection and safety and insurance, respectively, so as to update the practices of the Department of Insurance and the Office of the Safety Fire Commissioner to provide for off-duty use of motor vehicles by certain law enforcement officers and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Insurance and Labor recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Walker of the 20th District Chairman. The Insurance and Labor Committee offers the following substitute to House Bill 984. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Titles 25 and 33 of the OCGA relating to fire protection and safety and insurance, respectively, so as to modernize the practices of the Office of Insurance and Safety Fire Commissioner and insurers to promote efficiency and further purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 20th. Speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, there's nothing like a good old insurance agency bill right after lunch to get everybody's blood flowing and get you awake and excited. This is going to be thrilling here. House Bill 984 is a bill from our esteemed Commissioner of Insurance and Safety Fire, John King. He's doing a great job for the citizens of Georgia. It's mostly updates to keep us in compliance with NAIC and NCOL and other acronyms like that, but Sections 1 and 2 extend off-duty vehicle use privilege to all the post-certified agents and investigators of the department under certain conditions. Section 3 has to do with our NAIC accreditation, which is the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. Aims to delete subsection T of OCGA 33-10-13, aligning state law with National Association of Insurance Commissioners model law. Section 4 allows insurance companies to send plan notifications by electronic means. It is a optional. The policyholder can elect to still receive paper notifications, but this allows for electronic notifications. Section 5 is a request from the Department of DBHDD, the Department of Behavior, Health and Developmental Disabilities, and they want to move the decision making on folks with physical disabilities or mental disabilities that are able to stay on their parents' insurance. Somebody has to certify that they can stay on the plan beyond age 26, and they think that would better fit under the Department of Insurance. And that is what the legislation does. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions if there are any. Thank you for your indulgence. I ask for your favorable consideration, and I will yield the well.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Questions on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. Senator from the 24th, for what purpose do you rise?
Mr. President, isn't it true that this senator that just come out of the well looked like he's had a nose job or something? His nose looks real brown.
The senator just knows what butters his bread, you know? On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 50, the nays are 1. This bill having received the requisite constitutional majority is therefore passed by substitute. We're going to take up a special action right now. Senator from the 8th, recognize you for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate agree to the House substitute to SB 465.
All right, the Senate has agreed, moves that the Senate agree to the House substitute on Senate Bill 465. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 465, a bill by Senator Goodman of the 8th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 5 of Title 16 of the OCGA relating to homicide so as to provide for the felony offense of aggravated involuntary manslaughter and for other purposes. The House offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 465, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 16 of the OCGA relating to crimes and offenses so as to provide for the felony offense of aggravated involuntary manslaughter and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the Senator from the 8th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. As many of you were in the chamber when I presented Senate Bill 465, otherwise known as Austin's Law, this bill started with an email that I received from a friend of mine, Gus Walters, in January of 23, some 15 months ago. And Gus would email me about once a month, and I would forward those emails to the Lieutenant Governor, to his General Counsel, and his Chief of Staff. Gus's son, Austin, passed away from fentanyl poisoning. And Gus was emailing me asking what can we do to address the fentanyl epidemic. It's been a long journey this year, Mr. President. And I want to say this from the bottom of my heart. I'm so thankful to you and to your staff for pouring love on the Walters family. I've seen you hug Miss Beth's neck in your office and tell her that you're going to get this done for them and for Austin. I've seen your staff cry with them, and I think it's a testament to the kind of person you are and the kind of people that you have working with you. I also want to thank the Judiciary Committee, Senator Strickland, and the Senate. I want to thank my fellow members here that have poured love on the Walters family through this process. I want to thank Whip Burchett in the House, who carried this bill in the House, and for the Judiciary Committee in the House and the work that they did on this bill. This bill passed unanimously in the House a few hours ago. Unanimously. We all know what the fentanyl epidemic's doing in this country. And when we filed this bill, I began receiving emails and text messages and Facebook messages from people that lost their children to fentanyl. And I can't tell you how I can't help, but when you see these pictures of these kids, seeing the face of my own children. And we have in the chamber here with us today Laura and Tommy Barron. Their son John passed away from fentanyl. Laura is a childhood friend of Gus. Over 70% of the fentanyl, over 70% of the drug-related overdoses are attributed to fentanyl. It truly is an epidemic. It knows no race, it knows no gender, it knows no socioeconomic status. It affects Georgians and Americans from every background. The bill that you have before you today, we've worked with the House on it. We took out the delivery and distribution language. We also added, Representative Derek McCollum has had a bill making it illegal for someone who is not an authorized person to own a pill press, because that's where so much of these deadly substances, people making counterfeit substances that have fentanyl in them. I do hope the House once again voted for this bill unanimously. It would make me very proud to my friends in this chamber to vote unanimously on this bill. Austin doesn't have a voice anymore, but his parents are here. Gus and Beth, will y'all come up? Can you stand up? Come around there. I just want to thank you for all the trips that you've taken from Valdosta. I want to thank you. You have not missed a committee meeting. You've not missed anything. You've been a voice for your son that doesn't have a voice anymore. And indeed, the people in this chamber and the people across the aisle, they've been a voice for Austin and other kids like him. I want to thank you for your dedication to this bill, and I want to, somewhere up in heaven, Austin's looking down and he's very proud of you. And I want to thank you for being my friends, and thank you for making a difference making something positive out of a horrible tragedy. And I love y'all. With that, Mr. President, I just ask for favorable consideration from my friends in this chamber. I'll be glad to answer any questions if anybody has one. If not, I will yield the will.
You do have a couple questions, Senator. I recognize the senator from the 41st.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chairman, do you yield?
I do.
Isn't it true that you've worked diligently and faithfully to address some of the issues that both the senator from the 14th and I spoke compassionately and passionate about? Isn't it true that you've worked to resolve those issues?
The senator knows of what she speaks. Yes, ma'am.
And isn't it further true that you've ensured that those who are next to, who are sharing those drugs with each other, they weren't selling, but if their friend gets in trouble, that they can still call for help and be covered under our current existing laws? Isn't that true?
The senator knows of what she speaks. That is correct.
And do you finally yield, my friend?
Be glad to.
Isn't it true? It's my great honor to be able to stand with you and this family and vote yes on this bill.
Thank you, my friend.
Recognize the senator from the 14th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
I do.
Senator, I simply wanted to ask, isn't that true that we are grateful to the family and to you for your patience in the legislative process, and that we all stand proudly with the family today and for common sense, good law?
Thank you. Thank you to my friend from the 14th. I very much appreciate you saying that.
Thank you, Senator.
You have no more questions, Senator.
With that, I will yield the will. Of everything that I've done in the 4 years I've been here, this is something that I'm the most proud of this, of anything that I've been a part of since I've been here. And I just want to thank all of you that have helped get this law to this point. And it means a lot to me, and it means a lot to the Walters, and it's going to mean a lot to the children across this state. And with that, Mr. President, I will yield the will.
Thank you, Senator. The senator has moved that we agree to the House substitute on Senate Bill 465. Is there objection? Hearing no objection, all those in favor of the measure will vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine.
Here's our tentative plan. We're gonna try and get through all these pretty quick.
Senator from the 26th, your light is on. Do you, Senator from the 26th, your light's on. Do you wish to speak? On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 53 and the nays are 0. And well done, Senator from the 8th, and to the families who've lost children, loved ones to the fentanyl, our hearts and prayers go out to you. But Gus and Beth, we do want to give you a special thanks for y'all's hard work and dedication, and y'all really, y'all don't know how much inspiration y'all gave to the senator from the 8th, and we appreciate it, and all of us, quite frankly. So thank y'all very much. Thank y'all very much for being here. So. All right, we have House Bill 1015. Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 1015, a bill by Representative McDonald of the 26th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 7 of Title 48 of the OCGA relating to the imposition, rate, computation, exemptions, and credits relative to income taxes so as to reduce the rate of the tax and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Finance recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Huffstetler of the 52nd District Chairman. Additionally, there is a fiscal note attached. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 50th. Speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to bring House Bill 1015 to accelerate the tax cut for the state individual income tax. This is brought on behalf of Governor Kemp, and this measure passed the House unanimously in a bipartisan manner. In 2022, the General Assembly passed and the Governor signed into law House Bill 1437 to provide for the largest income tax cut in our state's history. The original bill initiated a flat tax beginning at 5.49% for the tax year 2024, and then allows for an annual step down in our income tax rate where we'd go from 5.75% in tax year 2023 to an eventual 4.99% as long as certain fiscal success markers are met each year. While the first 10 basis point step down is supposed to occur next year in January 2025, to cut the 5.49% rate for tax year 2024 to a 5.39% rate for tax year 2025, this bill accelerates that step down up a year. What this means is that in just one tax year, we'll realize a 36 basis point tax cut in our state's individual income tax rate, reducing taxes year to year by approximately $1.1 billion and keeping dollars in the pockets of hardworking Georgia taxpayers. Additionally, OPB has accounted for the revenue reduction estimate of the 10 basis point rate cut, and the governor's budget reflects that estimate. where the reduction has been built into the budget. So by this bill, we are continuing to conservatively manage our budget and put money back in the hands of Georgians. And with that, Mr. President, I'll yield the will.
All right, Senator is yielded. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to a report of committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 40, the nays are 12. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Recognize Senator from the 33rd. For what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 22nd for business inside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 22nd is excused. Moving on to House Bill 1023. Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 1023, a bill by Representative Williamson of the 112th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 7 of Title 48 of the OCGA relating to the imposition, rate, computation, exemptions, and credits relative to income taxes so as to match the rate of the tax imposed on corporations to that imposed on individual taxpayers, to amend Chapter 13 of Title 48 of the OCGA relating to specific business and occupation taxes so as to repeal the corporate network tax and further purposes. The Committee of the Senate on Finance recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Huff-Settler of the 52nd District Chairman. Additionally, there is a fiscal note attached. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 52nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. As the senator just recently said, the bill had passed in the House, I think unanimously before me. This one was 138 to 28, but that one was less than unanimous too before, so we'll see how it goes. This bill will fix the corporate income tax rate to be equal with the personal income tax rate. It had been that way for a number of years, decades, I guess I should say. We had lowered the personal tax rate recently, had not done the corporate tax rate. I was interested at the time more in the personal tax rate. There is a lot of research that says that there's more economic activity gained by lowering the corporate rate than the personal rate, so this would put it down equal with the personal rate. Now, the bill originally did three things, and two things of them are still there. One thing it did was it gives the state those that file their state corporate return an extra month, like many other states from Alabama to New Jersey already do. We'll be joining quite a number of other states that do that. There's no fiscal impact on that. It also lowers the income tax rate to be equal to the 5.39. The original bill had repealing the corporate net worth tax in it. That's no longer there. So if you see if you're looking at the fiscal note on it, which probably you're not, those 5 lines, just pick out the 3rd line, and that's the number that is the cost. I think it's a great measure for Georgia. We're continuing to try to reduce our taxes. We're in a competitive environment with many other states, such as North Carolina, that have reduced theirs, I believe, down to 2.5 now. If there's no questions, I'll yield to Will.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. All those in favor vote yea. All those opposed nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 34 and the nays are 17. This bill, having received requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Moving on to House Bill 1083. Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 1083, a bill by Representative Williamson of the 112th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 7 of Chapter 3 of Title 37 of the OCGA relating to adult residential mental health services licensing, so as to extend grace periods applicable to the Department of Community Health, including creation and promulgation of rules and regulations and the issuance of a one-time provisional license and for other purposes. The Committee on Health and Human Services recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Watson of the 1st District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Senators from the 43rd, for what purpose do you rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 26th.
Without objection, Senator from the 26th is excused. Senator from the 25th, will you?
Thank you, President. Ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 23rd for business inside the Capitol.
All right, without objection, Senator from the 23rd is excused. Senator from the 51st.
I believe it's contagious, sir. I'd like to ask for unanimous consent to excuse a senator from the 29th for business across the way.
All right, y'all need to remind these senators they're paid to be here to vote now. So, but without exception, the objection, the senator is excused. Recognize Senator from the 1st. Speak to the bill.
After all those excuses, let me remind us that we're voting on House Bill 1083. This has to do with adult mental health residency programs, and it was created in 2022. Rules were promulgated, and they were not finalized, though these programs were given licenses, provisional licenses, and this just allows a grace period of a few more months relating to getting those rules finalized. And basically, that's it. Mr. President, I'll yield the well and ask for your favorable consideration unless there are questions.
You have no questions, Senator. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 49, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Moving on to House Bill 1114. Secretary, read the caption. That's it.
House Bill 1114, a bill by Representative Wade of the 9th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 33 of the OCGA relating to insurance so as to enact the Data Analysis for Tort Reform Act, to provide for definitions, to provide for applicability, to provide for data collection from certain insurers, insurance rating organizations, and state agencies, and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Insurance and Labor recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Walker of the 20th District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 18th, excuse me, pro tem. Sorry about that. I had to find my spot there. All right. Senator from 18th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon. As everybody in this chamber knows, many of us in this chamber and many under this gold dome have been working and looking for ways for the last number of years in which we can make slight tweaks in our civil justice system to correct what some see needs to be some adjustments in our civil justice system, specifically related to tort reform or tort relief measures. House Bill 1114 is the first part of Governor Kemp's multi-year approach to civil litigation reform. As I think we all know from the last year or longer, we've heard the governor speak of concerns about this, specifically as to the effect that this problem has in our business community, and to drill down further, specifically looking at what has been the end result on our insurance rates that our citizens pay and the insurance companies that provide those policies to us in this state. Anecdotally, as we all know, many insurers have left the Georgia market at increasingly and alarming numbers. And quite frankly, some of the insurance companies that have remained in Georgia have completely stopped writing new business in Georgia. So we need to understand exactly how Georgia's tort liability system impacts the insurance market, and we need to know what we can do to mitigate those effects to get things back in balance to the point where we can have good, healthy insurance companies that are here, they want to stay, and new companies want to come into the Georgia market. That's good for consumers, that's good for the insureds, that's good for businesses, that's good for homeowners and car drivers who have auto policies, we've all seen our rates skyrocket recently. Liability insurance is also something that is very healthy for our American tort system, our American business, and a way to mitigate against risk. Without insurance, it is much harder for plaintiffs who are injured to then be able to actually see and find a recovery or realize a recovery in the event that they're successful in a lawsuit. So everybody, plaintiffs and defendants, need a robust and healthy competitive insurance market. And we also need to look at how we need to look at the civil justice system and whether or not changes need to be made there. This bill, though, focuses on the insurance aspect of the problem that we've just discussed, or that I've just discussed. And this bill specifically instructs the Department of Insurance to collect data, and that data will be on things from how insurance companies assess risk, how they assess particularly tort-related risk, and it also provides that the Department of Insurance and the states, as the state's ultimate regulator in this field, has the authority to collect the data. Now, some say, well, wait a minute, can't they already do this? Yes, the insurance commissioner can do some of the things that we've talked about and some of the things that are needed, but not everything. And even for those areas where the data can be collected, the problem is they can't amalgamate it and then use it or disseminate it out in some useful fashion, because it is understandably deemed by the insurance industry as something that is proprietary information and sourced from confidential information. So this bill permits the insurance commissioner to consult with state agencies like the Department of Administrative Services to collect the data and apply it as to the state's liability. You'll also see that the bill instructs the insurance commissioner to submit an initial report to the governor's office, also the House Committee on Insurance, and very appropriately, the Senate Insurance and Labor Committee by November 1 of this year. This really is a relatively simple bill. I hope that this will be the way that will get us the most accurate and more complete data to help us fully understand what's driving the issue and problems with insurance companies wanting to leave Georgia and why our insurance policies continue to go up, and then what is the nexus or connectivity between that and the tort issues and what's going on in our civil justice system with things that we've talked about before, whether it's nuclear verdicts or other things that are understandably believed to be associated with why we have to do something in seeking some meaningful and thoughtful tort reform. So I commend the governor's approach to this. It is a thoughtful way to gather information with a full anticipation that next year in 2025 that we'll be able to have some meaningful legislation proposed to address these problems and some data to back up why the solution being offered is the fix to the problem that we've identified. With that, Mr. President, I'm happy to answer any questions, or I'm happy to yield the well.
You do have a couple questions, Senator. Recognize the senator from the second.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, do you yield?
I do, from my friend from Savannah.
Senator, will this bill address the issue of many insurance companies that are canceling folks' insurance coverage in the primary market, forcing them into the secondary and tertiary markets, in which case many insurance companies are the largest investors in some of those secondary and tertiary insurance companies in the market?
Senator, you raised a great question, and you've identified one of the problems that we've got here in Georgia, that is the ripple effect of that ultimately produces increasing rates, lower coverages, and fewer choices when it comes to having an insurance company insure us. I would say that this bill should get the information that should illuminate why what you just described is happening, and that's really what we're trying to do.
Does the Senator further yield?
Yes, sir.
So, Senator, you're saying that the insurance companies are going to comply and share all of that data on the back end with the insurance commissioner to make that determination. Is that what you're saying?
Well, what I'm saying is that if you'll look at lines 72 through 78, it talks about the reporting of the data, that the commissioner may request this data. Subsection B says the commissioner may consult with any state agency as the commissioner deems necessary. If you look at lines 80 through 88, it further talks about the documents, materials, and other information in the possession or the control of the department under this chapter shall be confidential. And specifically, Senator, if you'll look at lines 96, which will be a new proposed code section of 33-66-5, it talks about that the commissioner is going to request the data and what will be done with the findings. I think this bill read in its entirety does give the commissioner the ability to compel the insurance companies to provide the information that you just described and then utilize it within the construct of this law, what I hope will be new law.
And Senator, my final question, if you yield.
Sure.
What is the penalty for insurance companies that do not comply with the request from the department for such information?
Senator, I think that would be up to whatever the regulatory hammers that the department, that the Commissioner of Insurance has for insurance companies that don't comply. It is my general understanding that that's a pretty good hammer that our insurance commissioner has, because insurance companies know the leverage and the regulatory oversight that constitutional officer has over the insurance industry. Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. I look for and ask for your favorable consideration and vote on this bill that comes to us from the governor's office from a very thoughtful position, and something that should put us well positioned to do more work on this next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senators yield. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 28 and the nays are 22. This bill did not receive the requisite constitutional majority and therefore has failed. Recognize the senator from the 18th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move for reconsideration of the vote, HB 1114.
Repeat that for me, Senator. I missed it. I'm sorry.
Mr. President, move for reconsideration on the previous vote.
All right. And on the move for reconsideration, it will carry over to the tomorrow's calendar day for reconsideration. So you'll have a day to decide on that, to get to votes. Senator from the 20th, for what? Senator from the 20th asking? He's not here. Never. All right, moving on to the next bill. HB 1122. Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 1122, a bill by Representative Hilton of the 48th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to secondary and elementary education so as to provide for funding requirements to apply to local education agencies, to provide for one superintendent for each state school charter, to provide for funding for local and state charter school principals, and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Education and Youth recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Dixon of the 45th District Chairman. The Senate Committee on Education and Youth offers the following substitute to House Bill 1122. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 20 of the OCGA relating to education so as to provide for funding requirements to apply for local education agencies, to provide for one superintendent for each state charter school, and for other purposes. Senator Parent of the 42nd and others offer the following amendment to amend the substitute to House Bill 1122 by replacing lines 163 through 176 with the following. Annually calculate individual school and school system ratings, strike which shall be as a single numerical score on a scale of 0 to 100 and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize Senator from the 28th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I bring to you HB 1122. Currently, we have over 50% of charter schools in the state serving multiple grade bands within a single school. For an example, you got K through 8 or you got K through 12. And because of how principals are currently allocated, a K through 12 school, which serves hundreds and sometimes thousands of students, only pulls one principal. And so a lot of that, what we're addressing is in Section 1, which is where we're basically addressing this inequity, bringing up the charter schools in line with our these are state charter schools in line with our public schools. Section 2 and 3. This section allows local school districts and charter schools the discretion to allow children of part-time employees to attend the school in which the parent is employed, which is already allowed for full-time employees. So this section simply, we're not actually making it mandatory, but we are making it very clear that it will give the districts and charter schools the option to allow an enrollment preference for children of part-time employees. Section 4 addresses a conflict of interest provision regarding who may serve on a state charter school governing board. The current law prohibits any school district employee from serving on a state charter school governing board, but after consulting with the SCSE, it was determined that only executive level employees are conflicted out of state charter board membership. So a district employed a teacher could arguably serve on a state charter school board without a conflict of interest. And you've got an amendment from my dear friend from the 42nd, which I have signed on to this amendment as well. I'm sure she'll get into more depth, but this is for purposes of public transparency, allowing the Georgia Department of Education to annually calculate an aggregate performance rating or a single score for each public school and school system. These ratings shall be made available to the public on the board's website or the DOE's website and on the school system's website and on each individual school's website. And my dear friend, the chairman of higher ed supports that as well. I'm sure he'll be more than happy to confirm that with you. And I will yield for questions.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you. I urge your favorable support for HB 1122.
Senator from the 42nd, would you like to speak to your amendment?
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the Rules Chairman. This amendment just clarifies how the score related to the school's performance will work. This way, with the amendment, we know that the public will be able to see the single score that the school is earning, plus all the 5 components that go into it, which just helps with the public's understanding of how it's being calculated, as well as transparency for families. And I worked with the author on this, as well as the Governor's Office and the Governor's Office of Student Achievement. So I'm happy to answer any questions about this amendment or yield the well, if there are none.
Senator. Recognize Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, you yield?
Certainly, to my good friend, the Higher Ed Chair.
Yeah. Senator, thank you so much for bringing this amendment, and I also would like to thank the Senator from 28 for signing on to it. Would it be true to say that you have talked to several members of the Literacy Council about this amendment, and they concur with it?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chairman. I have conferred with members of the Literacy Council from your legislation last year, and again, grateful for all the work that you've been doing to advance the cause of improving Georgia's literacy.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for doing this.
If you have no further questions, Senator.
Thank you. Ask for your favorable consideration of Amendment 1 and yield the well.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. The question is on the adoption on Amendment 1, authored by the senator from the 42nd. Is there objection to the amendment? Hearing none, Amendment 1 is added. Question is on the adoption of the committee substitute as amended. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute as amended? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to a report of committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. Moving on to House Bill 12. Oh, I'm sorry. Might want to tell you what the vote is, huh? On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Moving on to House Bill 1201. Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 1201, a bill by Representative Gaines of the 120th and others, a bill to be taught an act to amend Code Sections 171021 and 35337 of the OCGA relating to vacating of sentence for trafficking victim defendants and review of individuals' criminal history record information, definitions, privacy considerations, written application requesting review and inspection, respectively, and for other purposes.
Recognize Senator from the 17th. Senator, stand by while she reads the substitute.
The Judiciary Committee offers the following substitute to House Bill 1201, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Titles 15, 17, 35, and 49 of the OCGA relating to courts, criminal procedure, law enforcement officers and agencies, and social services, respectively, and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Senator, the well's yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, I bring to you House Bill 1201. The substitute does two things. One, it codifies a commercial sexual exploitation recovery center, and this will allow DHS to work with these trafficking centers such as the place, Grace's Place up in Gwinnett County, that work with minors that are in DFACS custody, that are victims of human trafficking. And also the bill does the same thing that a bill the Senator from the 6th brought us earlier this year. It goes back under our bills we did several years ago, our leadership of the First Lady, that supports victims of human trafficking by making it where if they committed a crime as a direct result of being a victim, they could have that offense vacated from the record. It also dealt with those that committed a crime while a victim. They could have record restriction laws for those people, for those individuals. There was a loophole in that bill, and we did that, and I carried that legislation. One thing we did not cover is those that are not convicted but actually have a sentence they're still serving under a pretrial program or under a First Offender Act, and it also will now cover those individuals as well. Happy to answer any questions, Mr. President.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor will vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51 and the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. All right, we got a couple of special actions here. Recognize the senator from the 27th.
President, I move that the Senate agree to the House substitute to Senate Bill 233.
Senator has moved that the Senate agree to the House substitute on Senate Bill 233. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Bill 233, a bill by Senator Dolezal of the 27th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 20 of the OCGA relating to education, so as to provide for the establishment of promised scholarship accounts to be funded by the state in the amount of $6,000 per school year and for other purposes. The House offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 233, A bill to be enacted an act to amend Title 20 of the OCGA relating to education so as to provide for the establishment of promised scholarship accounts and related matters, to provide for the creation of the Georgia Education Savings Authority as a statewide authority and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize Senator from the 27th.
Thank you, Mr. President, colleagues. Good afternoon. I want to highlight for you some changes that the House made to Senate Bill 233, and then I'll remind us all of what this bill does, answer any questions, and be on my way. Senate Bill 233 passed this chamber over a year ago and has really been through 2 rounds of changes in the House. The first round of changes I'm not going to talk about because we all had the summer to review those. But the round of changes that I do want to talk to you about are the round of changes that were in the substitute that the House passed out last week. First and foremost, one of the changes that they made was to have a means-tested priority for students whose parents earned 400% or less of the federal poverty level, which is about $120,000 for a family of 4 in 2024. Next change that the House made was to establish a new dedicated authority that will be housed within Georgia Student Finance Commission to provide for a clear separation of financial resource management of a K-12 education-funded program. They established next that the program will not begin until the fall of 25-26, so next year's school year, not the one coming up in this fall. They added a section that puts into law all cumulative teacher pay raises since 2019. And as you know, we've had bipartisan support for these pay raises. It incorporates House Bill 941 from Speaker Pro Tem Jones and Chairman Irwin that provides that public schools may use capital construction dollars for voluntary public pre-K programs. Next, it references the existing statutory hold harmless language as it relates to FTE and QBE calculations. Next, it references the existing statutory language that allows for parents to enroll their children in a public school that is located within a school system in which the student resides if there is space available after the assigned students have been enrolled. Next, it caps the appropriation to the equivalent of 1% of the total QBE budget. That cap would equal $140 million this year as we invest in our existing budget $14 billion in K-12 education. And then lastly, the Georgia Promise Scholarship Act will stand repealed in its entirety on June 30th, 2035, or 10 years after the bill becomes effective, with the caveat that any student who is currently enrolled in the program will be able to essentially complete their K-12 education on the pathway that they're currently on. Those are the changes made in this bill, colleagues. I do want to take a moment of personal privilege. This has been a 6-year journey for me and a lot of people around the state. And Mr. President, this would not have happened without the significant support of your office as we fought to ensure that this bill gets across the finish line. To my colleagues in the Senate majority, this would not have happened without your support. I remember my freshman year, 2019, when this bill failed on the floor of the Senate. And it means the world to me that 5 years later, we united around this tailored bill that we could all agree is a step in the right direction. We wouldn't be standing here today if it wasn't for Governor Kemp identifying this last year over the summer at the start of this session as a priority, for the first time mentioning in a State of the State address by any governor in the history of the state of Georgia, putting the families at the centerpiece of the education, decision-making for their children, and allowing choices and options in education for those students who are in a school that may not be serving them best. Would not be standing here today were it not for Speaker John Burns and his commitment to getting this across the finish line. And lastly, we would not be standing here were it not for the advocates all around the state, both those who are advocating professionally, but more importantly, those parents who are advocating for their children, many of which wake up every day today and go to a school where the majority of third graders may not be able to read on grade level, or they just may not be the best fit in that school for whatever reason. And to my colleagues in the minority party, the last couple of times we have passed this or had this vote in the House, we've had a couple members of your party join us. And I wonder if anyone wants to do that today. The water is warm. We see states all over this union recognizing the importance of these bills. Many of these children are in your districts. Many of these parents asking for help are your constituents. And I would encourage you to think about them as we vote on this bill today. Mr. President, I'm happy to answer any questions, and if there are none, I would yield the well.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you.
Recognize Senator from the 42nd to speak to the measure.
Thank you. I appreciate the significant narrowing of this legislation that our colleagues in the House did, but it's still a very problematic bill for a couple reasons that I'm going to share with you briefly. Education is complicated and it's expensive. Choosing an institution and a program that fits a child's needs is hard, and I know because I've got two school-age children myself. And when you factor in cost, it gets even more difficult. And some families don't have the choices that we would like them to have. The reality is that a $6,500 voucher here doesn't go nearly far enough to afford any quality private education. The state spends more than that on public schools. Tuition for private schools, quality private schools, is well beyond $6,500. If you want to talk about real school choice, and I've said this before, let's talk about it. Put our money where our mouth is. Give every kid $20,000. Give them $25,000. Then we'd actually be talking about real school choice. $6,500 is a shiny object to distract from the failings of this building, of education, Georgia's education system. Can't fix it without hard conversations and real investment. This is a shiny object, in my opinion, to distract from that. And the lack of accountability built in is a real tell that it's nothing but a shiny object to distract from the things that we should be doing to improve Georgia's public schools. This is really a choice for private schools. All of you know, I think, that the family actually wouldn't be able to choose. Private schools can and do reject students all the time. And they can do that for any reason that they want. Lack of space, ability to pay, behavioral difficulties, English as a second language, not being able to meet the particular needs that that child and that family may present with. That's a luxury that our public schools do not have, and is one reason that it's incredibly difficult to compare the results of public schools and private schools, because you're just not starting with the same population. The same can be said at times for public charter schools, although I am a supporter of public charter schools. Once a family goes to one of these private schools, how will they know, with taxpayer money, and that's the key thing, with taxpayer money, how will the family know if their child is learning on grade level? What will happen if when a child is thrown from the frying pan of an underperforming public school into the fire of a failing private institution? Without accountability, precious time is lost and much damage can be done. Public schools are at the heart of the idea of meritocracy, of equality, and opportunity for all, which have been bedrock principles of our nation. They have to work for all kids, rich and urban, rural and poor. They have to work for those who are recent immigrants, for those that have cerebral palsy, for those with severe difficulties or conditions, and that is not the case when you're talking about private schools. Therefore, failing to invest sufficient resources in our public schools is a dereliction of duty, and there has been a dereliction of duty out of this state on public education for decades and decades. And certainly I know firsthand the decades that I've been involved in politics here in the state of Georgia. But we don't have to guess. As the senator from the 27th mentioned, other states have taken this path. And we don't have to hypothesize about the consequences of going down this route. The upshot of a recent study of Arizona's universal voucher program was that vouchers are, and I quote, a costly form of welfare for the wealthy that hurts rural and low-income students. They provide no educational accountability and lead to state-funded discrimination. Our current levels of performance in public schools, and in fact our whole entire spending formula, are unacceptable. I probably don't need to remind any of you that our QBE formula dates to, I believe, 1983. It doesn't account for many aspects of modern education. It also makes us one of only 6 states that does not wait for poverty. One of only 6 states that hasn't acknowledged the reality that when you really talk about quote unquote failing schools, the most important predictor of whether or not those schools are performing the way we'd like is the population that walks in the door. You can draw a map, failing schools, impoverished areas. It's really impoverished areas more than anything else. And so therefore, the fact that we have not waited for poverty in QBE is a real tell about the disregard for public education that this building holds. We're not making needed investments in the birth to 4 space. Many other states are making big investments there. 90% of a child's brain is formed by age 5. Meanwhile, we're in a position of planning to cut hundreds of millions from our CAPS program, as well as kick 20,000 kids off the program. If you look at the science of reading, of brain development, and you actually were looking for a way forward to improve outcomes for Georgia's kids and therefore feed our workforce and our economy, this clearly would not be your answer, which is why I feel that there's really just an ideological drive behind it, maybe some sort of free market ideology, shiny object thing, like that'll fix everything. But at 6,500, I got news for you. It's not gonna fix anything. We do have a report on our desks from this morning, and I thought it was interesting that it got put on our desks the same day that this bill would come up for an agree. the state of literacy in Georgia. I just want to quote a couple paragraphs highlighted within this document. 56% of Georgia's third grade students cannot read proficiently. These students are more likely to drop out of high school. That's a 5% increase compared to 2017. The poverty rate for high school dropouts is over 3 times higher than for adults with a high school diploma. So you'll see this is the low literacy cycle, where people that do not gain the proper literacy that is needed to succeed in the modern era get trapped in that cycle. On the next page, you'll see that it actually has national security implications. The military's more stringent standards are now requiring a GED and several college-level courses in order to enlist in the military. And we are informed here, and this is from Deloitte Development, if Georgia's low literate populations grow, the state's military recruitment efforts will be challenged. So we have a crisis. It's impacting our workforce. It's impacting our national security and our military readiness. Page 7 points out that the majority of the fastest growing industries in our state require higher education and literacy. That's data from the Georgia Department of Labor. So we've got this lack of funding and put your money where your mouth is acknowledgement of several of the critical problems facing our state in terms of education with poor literacy and failure to invest in early childhood literacy and education. But instead of moving toward funding those programs, which there's a supposed agreement and acknowledgement are important, we just are shoveling money out the door on a shiny object. And again, that's a real tell on where this building's priorities truly lie. Again, there's no accountability in this bill. We literally just passed a bill, the one I just put an amendment on, to require DOE to post these scores of how the public schools are doing, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And for this, no accountability wanted. No curiosity about how these institutions may or may not function. All I can say about that is it must be some wrong-headed ideological commitment without evidence to some notion of a free market system. Because why you would send that money out the door with no accountability while 4 minutes ago passing a bill requiring these scores for every single school is a complete mystery to me. Other things that we should be doing and that bills like this get in the way of, and by the way, there's no disagreement that we should be doing it. It's a matter of how, when you pass this and you can't do that, which then is a tell about what you're prioritizing. Things like increasing literacy coaches and specialists, professional learning for educators, and high-quality curriculum materials to support the effective implementation of the Georgia Early Literacy Act passed in 2023. Supplemental funding for low-income students to provide those needed academic and non-academic supports. Increasing the number of school counselors, school psychologists, and school social workers to meet recommended best practices for the number of students each position should serve. None of that's in this bill. I'm glad that we've codified the still inadequate pay raises for teachers that have been done in the past few years. Obviously, I've been supportive of those. I'm excited that a bill that I first introduced 7 years ago related to capital outlay funds is included in this. That's great. But when you're not doing all those things, when you're not funding the implementation of the Early Literacy Act, when you're allowing a ratio of 1 counselor for 450 high school students to stand, yeah, that's really telling. And this is the priority over that. This is the priority versus keeping 20,000 kids on the CAPS program. You can't have it all both ways. Don't pretend you can. Don't pretend you can. Not with our budget realities. So that is the choice you are making. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm happy to answer any questions. If not, I will yield the well. Thank you. I urge that no vote on SB 233, and I will yield the well.
Recognize Senator from the 37th.
Mr. President, I'd like to thank the efforts of the gentleman from the 27th on this. This is, as he said, is an issue that's been many years in coming. I want to ask folks in this debate as we wrap this up, and we'll be voting this very soon, but I want to ask a couple important questions that were raised by the senator from the 42nd that I think our body and those from Georgia who are considering considering this issue and considering the very important vote on this need to think about. I want to ask people here, how many folks would like your elected officials that you voted for to choose your doctor? How many trust your state senators to pick your doctor? In fact, to the ladies, how many of you would trust your local elected officials to pick the OBGYN that delivers your children? Would any takers here? Any takers for that? It's absurd. We would never, ever, ever consider having government officials picking people's doctors for them. Well, I've asked that question before, so why would we not want to have government officials that are duly elected by citizens pick people's doctors? And folks say to me, well, Ed, it's Senator Sessler, it's a very, very, very personal decision who your doctor is. And it is indeed. That decision is almost as personal as who educates your 6-year-old 35 hours a week and pours into them every single day. The people that educate our kids are entrusted with a very, very, very sacred trust. It's a very important thing, which is why we have very high standards in our public schools, but we give people choices. Nowhere in our healthcare system does the government assign someone a doctor based on where they live or on what their income is. This bill simply recognizes that citizens should have some input on who their doctors are. Like we would never consider assigning a doctor to a person, people have a right to choose. And every year that passes where people recognize the reality we've faced for more than 100 years is that in this state, until we pass SB 233 and bills like it, we don't have choice except for a relatively narrow band of people. Where does school choice exist in our state? School choice exists in our state to people who have the financial resources to do it. We have school choice. If you have the dollars to move out of an area with failing schools and buy a home in an area where the schools work, you have school choice. If you have the resources to put your kids in private school by paying private school tuition with your after-tax income, you have school choice. Or if you have the ability to have one of your parents stay home and homeschool your kids, you have school choice. This bill, Senate Bill 233, is for those single moms out there working 2 jobs to keep the lights on who want school choice for their kids. They can't afford to move to a neighborhood, to an area that has a successful public school. They can't afford to sell their house because they're upside down in their mortgage. What Senate Bill 233 does is it looks at a police officer who's 6 years on the force, making $57,000 a year as a corporal, with a wife staying home with her 3 kids, and they have a kid going into kindergarten. They can't afford private school or they can't afford choice, but $6,500 makes a difference for them. Ladies and gentlemen who are watching this, I would ask yourselves this question. How many members of our state Senate have kids and grandkids in failing schools? Whether they're in a private school option or a public school option, people with means and connections find the way to make it work. Unfortunately, without Senate Bill 233, regular Georgians can't do that. This bill is not for connected people. This bill isn't for the elite. This bill is for the police officer in a single income household to give them a chance to influence their kids' education. The lady from the 42nd said that $6,500 is not going to do anything for anybody. Mr. President, as I wind down my remarks, I will tell you there's a private school in Cobb County. It's a fully accredited school that costs $7,500 per year. That the seniors in high school in that school last year, in their AP European history classes, 50% of the students made a 4, and 50% of the students made a 5 in their AP European history classes in a school that costs $7,500 per year, fully accredited school. $6,500 means a heck of a lot to parents who want to put their kids in that school. And what this bill does, and I appreciate the leadership of the gentleman from the 27th, that even though there's been some changes made, and even though we ought to be able to take care of kids no matter where they live, this state provides more funding at the state level as a percentage of our overall education spending of any state in the nation. We redistribute dollars across our state more than any state in the nation because there's high wealth and there's low wealth in this state, and this state is generous and recognizes the constitutional right that kids have for a fair and adequate education, a free and adequate education. And our goal in doing this is to move the ball forward so not just members of the state Senate have kids and grad kids in schools of their choice, but single working mamas, police officers in single-family households have a chance as well. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, we would never allow the government to assign us doctors. People always have the choice, even in the Medicaid system. They've got the ability to pick their doctor and have the private funding from Medicaid fund that service. The same for Medicare for our seniors. Why should our education system work any different? Who educates your 5- and 6-year-old for 35 hours a week is no less of a personal decision than who picks your doctor. And Senate Bill 233 makes a massive step forward in giving regular citizens, not just us in this room, but regular citizens, the chance to make that choice. I would ask everybody here to set aside partisan differences and make a vote for the have-nots, the folks in your district who would love to pull their kid out of a failing school and cry themselves to sleep at night. That the streets may be raising their kids, but they want to be able to make a choice, but they don't have the dollars to do it, but this bill gives them a chance. Urge your support for Senate Bill 233.
Recognize the senator from the 7th. Tell him, take that, Kennedy. Tell him over here.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, I rise as a voice for every family dreaming of a brighter future for their children. As we all know, education is society's greatest equalizer. I grew up in a working-class family, and from elementary school to high school, I went to a predominantly low-income school, where I was on the free and reduced lunch program. The idea of going to a private school was about as unrealistic as it could be. You see, this bill would have given me a $6,500 voucher, which would not cover my tuition at any good private school. This voucher program will cost $140 million a year, and it claims to be a ladder for educational opportunity. But in reality, it is a mirage for families like mine and for countless others across our state. This is not merely a debate about funding. It is a battle for the soul of our education system. For too long, our public schools have been suffering from a lack of funding. It's wrong to think that taking $140 million from taxpayers, public money, for vouchers will fix this problem. Public schools are the bedrock of our communities, especially in rural Georgia, where this bill promises nothing but a continuation of neglect. Let us not be mistaken. This bill is a thinly veiled effort to segregate and discriminate under the guise of choice. Private institutions free to pick their students will inevitably leave behind those who perhaps need the most support. Our special needs students, our struggling learners. These are the children who will suffer the most, cast aside in a system that was supposed to elevate them. Vouchers are not the panacea they are made out to be, and evidence shows they undermine the very foundation of public education, offering no significant improvement in student success while exacerbating inequalities. They originate from a dark period in our history, initially used as a tool to circumvent school desegregation, and today they serve as a vehicle for a different kind of segregation, one that divides our students not just by race but by income, by ability, by need. The argument that vouchers will solve the perceived failures of public education is as flawed as it is dangerous. And instead of investing in improving methods that support our teachers and enrich our classrooms, we are diverting critical funds to private schools that lack accountability to taxpayers who fund them. This bill does not offer a choice for the many, but a privileged few. And let's not forget that some of these private schools are not accredited, which means students who graduate from these private schools would not be eligible for the Hope Scholarship. In addition, I wanted to bring up that our own Senate publication, where it talks about Arizona, published in January, said that the tax cuts and school vouchers were responsible for Arizona's $400 million budget deficit. The year before that, they were at a $1.8 billion surplus. Today, we begin down that same path of fiscal irresponsibility by cutting taxes and implementing a costly voucher program. Are we going to waste our surplus with a costly disinvestment in our public schools and by choking our state revenue? To those who say this bill is for the betterment of Georgia's children, I ask you, whose children? Not the child in rural Georgia who watches as his school's resources dwindle further, not the child with special needs who finds the doors of opportunity slammed shut, and not the child of the working poor who sees this so-called choice as nothing more than a hollow promise. We stand at a crossroads, Georgia. Down one path lies the fragmentation of our education system, the deepening of disparities that we have fought so hard to overcome. Down the other, there is a road of progress, a road of investment in public education, a belief in the potential of every child, regardless of their zip code, their needs, or their family's income. And today, I stand before you to advocate for that road of progress. Let us reject this voucher program and its $140 million price tag, and instead, let us invest in our public schools, in our teachers, and most importantly, in our children. For they are not just the future of Georgia, they are Georgia's present, its heart and its soul. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Recognize the senator from 39th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm sorry, but I've got to ask, who is this bill for? Who among those who will actually be impacted by this bill wants this to pass? Who are we trying to help? It's certainly not the students. We aren't the first state to try an ESA program. It's been done and evaluated, and the overwhelming majority of studies conducted by respected apolitical organizations have found that the use of vouchers and ESAs in the United States create negative outcomes for students, particularly in terms of academic performance, test scores, and matriculation rates. Even conservative think tanks like the Cato Institute have admitted that Louisiana and Indiana's voucher programs hurt students' overall academic achievement. The studies Republicans traditionally cite in an attempt to support pieces of legislation like these are misleading. For example, in order to support the claims regarding positive academic outcomes, conservatives cite studies that only examine the results of private versus public education and have nothing to do with vouchers or ESAs at all. When they want to claim positive outcomes in general, They'll cite studies which measure levels of parent satisfaction with the change of schools and to what degree the parents see their family's values reflected in the school's environment. Those questions just aren't before us today. The truth is, the only study finding a positive outcome for students under similar programs like this was in Washington, D.C., and that was because of the close proximity of all of the schools in play. Their program led to higher graduation rates, but they still had lower academic achievements, test scores, and matriculation rates. So you can't just argue that this helps students in good conscience. We're also not helping Georgia's working families. This legislation isn't for them. Let's get real. The average yearly private school tuition for private school is almost $12,000. $6,500 isn't going to cut it for working families. Only those children whose parents can afford private school without SB 233 would use the $6,500 credit. We're handing out money to wealthy families and gutting our public schools to do it, because $6,500 is more than double the amount allocated for each public school student, which is $3,022.47 for fiscal year 24. So what really happens is these families are actually left with no choice but to stay in a school that is now even more underfunded and lacking in resources than it was before. And we know this legislation hurts teachers, the ones everybody here claims they want to protect. But if we want to protect them, why won't we listen when Georgia's teachers tell us they strongly oppose this bill? Shouldn't that matter? You know, we have a bad habit of passing bills on behalf of folks who do not support it at all. So what are we doing here? If this program doesn't make things better for students or teachers or Georgia's working families, then who the heck is it for? Whose interest are we serving? We heard comments that bill may provide the only option for schooling for some families in this state, and therefore it's worth it. Is it worth depriving the rest of the families in the state who also have a constitutional right to an adequate education of access to the school of their choice? I would encourage every Georgian whose representative votes on this bill to call and ask why. Ask the real reasons why. Ask them to tell us which interests are involved in advancing this legislation and what are the real motivations behind it. Since we know it's neither student, nor teacher, nor the everyday family living in Georgia, ask them to tell us who stands to benefit from the push towards privatizing education and whose special interests are really being served here. And then ask them whether they believe they have a responsibility to protect the rights and freedoms of those with whom they disagree. Mr. President, I yield the well.
Recognize the senator from the second.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, a few weeks ago, early in the session, we had a debate about sports betting and if it was constitutional or whether it was unconstitutional, if it needed a constitutional amendment or if it didn't. So, colleagues, this morning I rise to challenge your thinking about whether SB 233 is constitutional or unconstitutional, because Section 2, Paragraph 7 of our Constitution says there's a separation of church and state. No money shall ever be taken from the public treasury directly or indirectly in aid of any church, sect, cult, or religious denomination, or of any sectarian institution. And then as I read SB 233, I looked on lines 313, and it said private school means a non-public school, sectarian or non-sectarian, which is accredited or in the process of becoming accredited by a recognized accrediting agency, as such term is defined in Code Section 20-14-96, or by one or more of the entities listed in subparagraph A of paragraph 6 of this code section. And so I had the question to wonder about sectarian schools and how money would be spent. So I decided just to do a quick Google search. And I happened to find the Archdiocese of Atlanta. And the mission statement for Catholic schools in the Archdiocese of Atlanta states that our schools are committed to providing an excellent education in an environment of spiritual, moral, intellectual, and physical formation in accordance with the teachings of the Roman Catholic Church. The Catholic schools in the Archdiocese of Atlanta serve a vital role in the evangelizing and educational mission of the church. And so, colleagues, I thought in the state constitution it said, no money shall ever be taken from the public treasury, directly, indirectly, in aid of any church, sect, cult, or religious denomination, or of any sectarian institution. And so, colleagues, I looked at the remainder of this bill and I noticed that it's missing a constitutional amendment. Because if you truly want to give money in the form of educational choice, then you ought to do it with a constitutional amendment. This bill does not have a constitutional amendment. And then as I further read, colleagues, I read in this bill that if you were a corporation, had been around and could demonstrate financial soundness, you could get a school. How do we determine what qualifies as a school? If I got enough money and I can show that based off of anticipated enrollment, I got enough cash in the bank, then guess what? I too can get a school. Almost sounds like a show. You get a school, you get a school, you get a school. So where's the accountability for public dollars? This is done under the guise of educational freedom and educational choice, but colleagues, I tell you, the way I look at it, it appears to me to be a little unconstitutional. And when I think about what it means to talk about public education and what's happening in schools, I think history has shown us the condition of our schools are based on the environment in which we place them. When we decided to segregate neighborhoods and create districts that would be based off of neighborhood schools, that would mean that those schools would only allow the children from those neighborhoods to go to those schools. That means we segregated those schools. But now you say we've got some educational freedom and some educational choice. Well, this body has passed many bills and legislations about librarians being held accountable, about being able to teach critical race theory, about all of these other issues you don't want to see in public schools. But now, colleagues, where's that in this bill? But when I read this bill, on line 474, it says the Educational Savings Authority shall not require participating school or service to provider to alter such school or provider's creed, practices, admission policies, employment policies, or curricula in order to receive account funds under the program. So, colleagues, everything that we've passed in this body doesn't apply to SB 233. So by proxy, you've created a separate system in which the rules that you want to govern public schools will not apply to those under this bill. And so everything that we've spent our time discussing about librarians and the certification and who is having what books in the library, you don't know what books will be in the library at any of these schools. So colleagues, this is bad public policy because the rules that you've implemented for some don't apply to everybody. And this body has a job to have some good jurisprudence to make sure whatever we do, we apply it equally. But I'm going to tell you, colleagues, that the Promise Scholarship, whatever you want to call it, this ain't nothing but more game than Carter's got liver pills. Because if we were to be consistent in what we said and did, all the rules that we passed would have applied to these folks receiving these scholarships. But remember, I read to you, colleagues, it said on line 474, you can't change or alter a school or provider's creed, practices, admission policies, employment policies, or curriculum in order to receive funds. So, colleagues, I tell you that this bill should have had a constitutional amendment because it needs a constitutional amendment. Because I'm telling you, the same way when I had the conversation about sports betting, I felt it didn't need a constitutional amendment. You said it did. Well, I'm telling you today that this bill will need a constitutional amendment because I just told you what the state constitution says on Section 2, Paragraph 7. No money shall ever be taken from the public treasury directly or indirectly in aid of any church, sect, cult, or religious denomination or any sectarian institution. Unless I'm confused, colleague, this bill will not stop money from going to any of those schools. And so I want you to know, if you vote for this bill today, you're voting for something that's unconstitutional. And so if you're going to vote for something unconstitutional, at least have the backbone to tell folks that what you just passed today is going to be held up in court, and the folks that you wanted to get educational choice and freedom to would never see it because it's going to be what? Unconstitutional. And you need to come back to the drawing board and try again. And with that, Mr. President, I'll yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Recognize Senator from 56.
Mr. President, I'm going to move the previous question.
Senator has moved for the previous question. Is there objection? Is there objection? Without objection, Senator from the 27th can close debate. Recognize Senator from the 27th to close debate.
Thank you, Mr. President and colleagues. Well, I tried to be nice. And I feel the need to set the record straight. And I really, after listening to the previous couple speakers, I'm left with a couple of different questions. And the first one of which is, did you read the bill? The second one is, do you understand how public school is funded in the state of Georgia? Because we heard a couple of different things that would lead me to believe that either you didn't read the bill or you want the people at home to think that this bill is something that it's not. The minority caucus chair talked about there's no accountability. This bill has more testing for private school kids than my 4 children have in the public school that they attend. There is annualized testing in this. The House, under the leadership of Speaker Jones and Representative Todd Jones, added additional auditing to this bill. So this bill has incredible transparency by which parents and the public can see what their investment is. We've been through this time and time again, but these arguments keep coming up. So as it relates to the funding of education, our former chief economist, when he was at UGA, did a study for every school system in the state of Georgia and contemplated the question of what happens if you take the state funding and the child and remove it from public school. You're leaving behind the local funding. And what happens when you account for that marginal cost as it relates to the average spending that remains for the students that remain behind in public school? And the answer is there's more funding per child under these programs in 178 out of 180 districts. So I don't mind if we have debates about whether public money should be going to private institutions, which, by the way, if we want to unwind that, come drop a bill to get rid of the Hope Scholarship. Drop a bill to get rid of Medicaid. Drop a bill to get rid of Pell Grants. Drop a bill to get rid of pre-K. Because all of those programs take public money and send it to a private institution. So we have this feigned outrage about the distribution of funds, but it's really, really selective outrage. And I can't help but wonder why. You know, there was it was postured earlier that, well, this is a bill for the wealthy. I've got news for you. The wealthy already has school choice, including some of the wealthy members in this room who have been able to exercise school choice for their own children. It was further speculated, well, and it's this really kind of convoluted argument. $6,500 is going to bankrupt the school system, but it's really not enough money to help poor parents who want to get their kids into a private school or homeschool or virtual school or any of the other options that are available. Well, then drop a bill to raise the amount of money that's in the scholarship, and I'll be the second signer of that bill. By the way, we talked about the reality that this is a bill that is supported by multiple groups of voting populations if we want to divide Georgians up into groups. And I have a poll that I've cited before, and I'll read it again. ESAs have support from 81% of Republicans, 70% of Democrats, 78% of independents, 87% of Hispanics, 73% of African Americans, 77% of millennials, 80% of Gen X. When we ran a poll on this last year, do you know the only demographic that didn't support this? Wasn't African Americans, wasn't Hispanics, wasn't even Democrats. Democrats overall support it. The only demographic in our poll that we ran last year that does not support this is white Democrats. But when you look at this swath across the board of Georgia, the bulk of Georgians support this program. It was referenced before that the free market is a shiny object. And I would agree. The free market is a shiny object. It is a shiny object that has lifted more people out of poverty than any other market force in the history of humanity. And I want to give you an example of the free market at work. I think James has a photo that he's going to put up here, and as luck would have it, this morning, I had the opportunity to meet these students. And the person who founded their school, and she's actually off frame in this photo on the right, you can't see her. But she started a private school in Forest Park called Ladies of Favor Dream Academy. And we were told this morning $6,500 just isn't enough. These students told me this morning how they're learning Mandarin Chinese. They're involved in all sorts of extracurricular activities. They frankly seem to be getting a better education than my own children are getting. And do you know how much money they pay? $450 a month. Do you know what the median cost is for a private school in the state of Georgia? Maybe not the ones that y'all send your kids to, but the median cost of a private school in the state of Georgia, $8,300. So don't tell these parents that a $6,500 bridge can't change the life of their family, because it can. Why don't we just cover the whole cost of it? Because I think there's actually value in having these parents have skin in the game. I think there's value in having these parents engaged in the process. You know, when this bill was in the House last year, there was a representative who said the quiet part out loud, and she said that these poor parents can't be trusted, especially those without high school diplomas, can't be trusted to make educational decisions for their children. Made national news, but it gets to the core. It gets to the core of where we believe decisions should be made. It gets to the core of who we trust. And for myself and my colleagues that voted for this bill, we're saying that we trust parents. When this bill failed on the floor of the Senate in 2019, I was sitting at my desk right back there, and my friend, the former senator from, I believe, the 7th at the time, the numbers have changed, was walking past me in my moment of defeat. And the AJC reporter was right over there and took a photo. And the photo that ran the next day was her cheering in the foreground and me sulking in the background. Last year, I stood in the back of the House chamber. And after this bill fell short in the House chamber, the minority party erupted in applause. But it's not applause for children. It's applause for protecting institutions, protecting teachers' unions, building this moat around this thing that we say is one-size-fits-all education. Well, today, colleagues, I may just let out an applause when this bill passes. And when I cheer, I'm going to be cheering because students all over the state are going to have opportunities like those students who today are in a school, this all-girls school in Forest Park, Georgia, that is giving them the opportunity to learn Mandarin Chinese in the 3rd grade, that hopefully is preparing the next governor of the state of Georgia to lead this great state. And when I cheer today, I'm going to be cheering because more parents and more families will have more opportunities. And I'm lastly going to be cheering in thanks to my friends who are in the back of the room today that got this done on the House side. Speaker Pro Tem Jones and Todd Jones, who walked over here today, And Lieutenant Governor, I'm here cheering for you because your friendship means so much to me, but the way that you fought for this means the world to me. And you deserve the credit for getting this thing across the finish line. I'm so very grateful. With that, Mr. President, I yield the well.
All right. The question has been called, and the senator from the 27th has closed debate. The motion that the senator made from the 27th, that the Senate agree to the House substitute on SB 233. All those in favor will vote yes. All those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. Senator from the 7th, for what purpose do you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that I'm voting no today because I refuse to defund public education?
Senator is entitled to her opinion. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 33, the nays are 21. Well done, Senator from the 27th, and thank you for the cooperation with the House on this measure. It's something the Senator's worked very hard on since he's been in this, and I think children will benefit from this all across the state. Moving on to House Bill 1237. Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 1237, a bill by Representative Cannon of the 172nd and others, a bill to be enacted and to amend Code Section 2811 of the OCGA relating to definitions regarding agricultural commodity commissions, so as to revise the definition and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Agriculture and Consumer Affairs recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Gooch of the 8th District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Recognize Senator from the 11th.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is HB 1237. This is dealing with our Citrus Commodity Commission. We're just removing the definition of a producer so that they can gauge the production based off pounds instead of acres. This is very similar to how we do the Blueberry Commission and some of our other commissions. So this is a department bill. Be glad to take any questions. If there are none, I appreciate your support.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
The senator has yielded the well. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there an objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question is now on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. Mr. Secretary, please unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Moving on to HB 1326. Mr. Secretary, please read the caption.
House Bill 1326, a bill by Representative Stevens of the 164th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 13 of Title 16 of the OCGA relating to controlled substances so as to provide for certain provisions relating to Schedule 1 controlled substances, Schedule 3 controlled substances, and Schedule 4 controlled substances, and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Health and Human Services recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Watson of the 1st District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The chair recognizes the distinguished senator from Savannah to speak to HB 1326.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the annual drug update for controlled substances, and that's all it is, a list of 50 or maybe more drugs, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. If not, I'll yield the well and ask for your favorable consideration.
You have no questions, Senator. The senator has yielded the well. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there objection to the agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question is now on the passage of the bill. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. Mr. Secretary, please unlock the machine. Chair recognizes the senator from the 56th. What purpose do you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr.
State
President.
your inquiry.
Isn't it true, since you've been presiding in the last 5 minutes, this will be 2 bills passed already?
I think the senator does know of which he speaks. The chair appreciates the commentary, although I may pay for that somewhat later. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 50, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Mr. Secretary, please read the caption for HB 1344, House Bill 1344.
House Bill 1344, a bill by Representative Dempsey of the 13th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 2 of Title 37 of the OCGA relating to general provisions relative to the administration of mental health, developmental disabilities, addictive diseases, and other disability services and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Kauser of the 46th District Chairman. The Regulated Industries and Utilities Committee offers the following substitute to House Bill 1344, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 2 of Title 37 of the OCGA relating to general provisions relative to the administration of health, developmental disabilities, and for other purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Senator from the 50th, for what purpose do you rise?
Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 29th.
Without objection, the senator from the 29th is excused. Chair recognizes the senator from the 22nd.
Unanimous. Mr. President, ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 41st for business outside the Capitol.
The senator from the 41st is excused without objection. Chair recognizes the distinguished senator from the 32nd to speak to HB 1344.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is a department bill from DBHDD. It's identical to Senate Bill 336 that we heard in our committee. It does three things. It streamlines the licensing process for out-of-state mental health professionals coming to Georgia, consistent with our red tape rollback. It repeals 2 reports from DBHDD that are obsolete and redundant, and it also amends the Behavioral Health Coordinating Council by allowing the commissioners to send a delegate for quorum purposes, and it adds representation from Veteran Services, Corrections, and Pardons and Paroles. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Senator, you would do a great job with them, but no one has any questions, so you
Thank
did a
you.
great job presenting the bill.
Thank you. I yield the will.
The senator has yielded the well. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. The question is now on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to the agreeing of the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question is now, of course, on the passage of the bill by substitute, and all of you who want to vote yes, vote yea. Those who don't want to, vote nay. Mr. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 49, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Moving on, Mr. Secretary, please read the caption for House Resolution 598.
House Resolution 598, a resolution by Representative Martin of the 49th and others, a resolution proposing an amendment to the Constitution so as to vest judicial power of the State of Georgia Tax Tribunal, to provide for venue and jurisdiction of the Georgia Tax Tribunal, to provide for concurrent jurisdiction with superior courts, to provide for judges of the Georgia Tax Tribunal and their qualifications, and for other purposes. The Senate Committee on Judiciary recommends that this resolution do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland of the 17th District Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The chair recognizes the senator from the 17th to speak to House Resolution 598.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the constitutional amendment that will create a Georgia tax court versus having the court currently under the executive branch. This will create a separate court in our Constitution that will handle matters between the Department of Revenue and taxpayers. It'll create efficiency, due process, and it's something that'll help these cases move along a lot better for everybody involved. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Senator, you have no questions.
I ask for your favorable consideration.
The senator has yielded the will. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question is now on the adoption of the resolution. All those in favor of the resolution will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. Mr. Secretary, please unlock the machine. On the adoption of the resolution, the yeas are 49, the nays are 1. This resolution, having received the requisite constitutional two-thirds majority, is therefore adopted. All right, Mr. Secretary, please read the last bill on the rules calendar, HB 1267, please.
House Bill 1267, a bill by Representative Martin of the 49th and others, a bill to be titled an act to amend Title 50 of the OCGA relating to state government so as to repeal Chapter 13A relating to tax tribunals, to amend Title 15 of the OCGA relating to courts, to provide for the application of Chapter 11 of Title 9, the Georgia Civil Practice Act, discovery and attendance of witnesses, and further purposes. The Senate Committee on Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland of the 17th District Chairman. The Senate Committee on Judiciary offers the following substitute to House Bill 1267, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 50 of the OCGA relating to state government so as to repeal Chapter 13A relating to tax tribunals, to amend Title 15 of the OCGA relating to courts, so as to create the Georgia Tax Court and for the purposes. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The chair recognizes the senator from the 17th to speak to HB 1267.
Thank you, Mr. President. I can be brief because this is simply the enabling legislation to do what you just authorized, well, all but one, can't win them all, but authorized with the last vote to amend the Constitution. This actually sets up our tax court under our state code. Happy to answer any questions.
Senator, I don't see any questions.
I'll yield the well.
Okay. Senator has yielded the well. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea, and those opposed will vote nay. Mr. Secretary, please unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 45 and the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. The chair recognizes the distinguished majority leader for a motion.
Thank you, sir. I move that the Senate stand adjourned until 12 p.m. Thursday, March 21st.
The majority leader has moved that the Senate stand adjourned until Thursday, March 21st at noon. Noon, Thursday, March 21st. All those in favor? Whoop, excuse me. Oh. Mr. Secretary, please read the announcements. My apologies.
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Rules will meet upon adjournment in 450 of the Capitol. The Public Safety Committee will meet upon adjournment of rules in 450 of the Capitol. The Insurance and Labor and Higher Education Committees will meet at 5:30 p.m. in Mezzanine 1 and 307 of the Capitol. The Health and Human Services Committee will meet in 6:30 p.m. in 450 of the Capitol. The Finance Committee will meet at 7:30 p.m. in Mez 1 of the Capitol. The Education and Youth Committee meeting will be held at 7:30 p.m. in 310 CLOB. The Judiciary Committee will meet at 8:30 p.m. in 307 of the Capitol. 307 CLOB, excuse me. The State and Local Governmental Operations Committee has been canceled for tonight, but will meet at 7:30 a.m. tomorrow morning in 125 of the Capitol. Tomorrow, the Ethics Committee will meet at 8 a.m. in 307. The Regulated Industries Committee meeting will happen at 9 a.m. in 450 of the Capitol, and the Appropriations Committee will meet at 10 a.m. in 341 of the Capitol. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The chair recognizes the senator for the 19th.
Mr. President, I'm glad I'm not on judiciary. The one thing I do want to say, colleagues, is I do hope that you heard 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, we need a quorum in appropriations. When you may have gotten some calls from Superior Court judges, I hope I can head that away by giving you a comment right now, is that we're working on a plan now. We had to get the budget finished before we could start working on their bill. So hopefully we'll have something we can consider concerning Superior Court pay tomorrow as well. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the way.
Thank you, Senator. The chair recognizes the senator from the 47th.
I know those fun-loving folks in Judiciary will have a fun time tonight at 8:30, but SLOGO is not truly canceled. We moved to 7:30 tomorrow morning, so if our SLOGO members can be here tomorrow morning at 7:30. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Senator. Does any other senator wish to speak or make an announcement? Any other senators before we vote on the motion? So the majority leader has moved that we stand adjourned until noon tomorrow. Repeat, noon tomorrow, Thursday, March 21st. All those in favor of the motion will say aye. All those opposed? That actually was close. I think the ayes actually had this one. The Senate will stand adjourned until tomorrow at noon. Thank you.